started. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, but first I have to do technical things like share my screen.
And for folks joining us on Instagram, you're not missing anything. We do put together a deck for folks joining us on Zoom. And if you check my stories after this live, I'll make sure to throw up a link on there in case you'd like to join us there next time. We will make sure to say everything out loud that we have on the screen, but we just wanted to make it extra easy for folks on Zoom to be able to follow along with what we're talking about. On Instagram, you're just going to have to white knuckle ride it with the rest of us.
Well, and I got to hand it to Jess. She did some beautiful graphics, so you need to go look at it on YouTube. It's pretty amazing.
We do.
So this is to get our party started. This is Move the Needle, tools for white women, femmes, and thems, voting blue in red communities. And we meet on Zoom and on Instagram Live on Sundays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific.
So distracted by Yaya. Best song, Cowboy Carter. Okay, but to the point at hand, hello, everyone. So excited to see our friends from Indivisible and Mobilize and Southeast Michigan, Washtenaw County. Wanted to make sure if you are wondering if you are in the right place, you are. Our content is specifically designed for white women, femmes, and thems. If this isn't you, if you are not white or do not identify as a woman, a femme, or a non-binary human, but you'd like to bring this learning back to friends, family, colleagues, we welcome you. It's not that any of this won't make sense to other people. It's just that we focus it specifically on white women. Part of that is because, white women are America's largest voting bloc. That's something I learned this year, where something like 39% of the voters in the active voters in the United States. So we are the largest plurality by a lot. We are also trending upwards in votes for Trump. White women went for Trump 47% in 2016 and 53% in 2020. Thinking about 2024, when Kamala Harris declared, Patricia and I felt a big urgency to be a part of the conversation and making sure that we were moving the needle a little bit closer to likely Harris-Walz administration. And we know that women are typically the most likely to affect the most effective change, which is in person-to-person conversations and relationships. So our contribution to the Harris-Walz campaign are the Move the Needle conversations.
And in support of these conversations, we have these wonderful working agreements. And if you were here in episode 2, we walked you through how to make working agreements for your relationship. But our working agreements for this conversation is, Jess, kick us off.
Yeah, so the first one is, and I'll say that this is for Patricia and I together, but we are also extending these working agreements to us, the Move the Needle community. We'll also be talking a little bit more about community guidelines, but for our conversation, we put aside the right to comfort. There's no right to comfort in this learning space. Instead, Patricia and I invite ourselves, each other, and you all to loving accountability. Patricia, you and I have known and loved each other for a long time, and it's important to us to love each other enough to tell the truth and to hold mirrors up that need holding up. Kindness and honesty are not mutually exclusive. The world is not a safe space. It requires courage. And I want to affirm for those of us that have been showing up for this work, that are showing up for this work, that will be showing up for this work, no right to comfort means courage and learning. And I'm very, very grateful for your courage tonight and always.
And our other value is resist binary thinking. The topics that we get into have many different contexts and a lot of gray areas, and there is rarely a clear right and wrong. In our conversations, we would like to move past right and wrong and really be a little bit comfortable with working things out and not being binary.
See, we should just resist the binary everywhere. I love it. Even though I'm a cis woman, I'm like, down with the gender binary. We also welcome generative conflict. In American dominant culture, in the Midwest, where Patricia and I find ourselves, in the South, where I'm from, as women, we are often rewarded for being conciliatory instead of leaning into conflict, and for being nice instead of being real. So, for the sake of these conversations, we invite ourselves, each other, and you to allow a lot of emotional space to be in conflict with each other, with the ideas presented, and even with yourself.
And we also encourage everybody to ask for the speed we need. I have benefited greatly from this guideline in my conversations with Jess, because often I process too quickly and not thoughtfully enough, and I don't leave enough space for anybody else either to process in the speed that we need. So asking to slow down, asking to think about it is not about being comfortable, but it's about having a thoughtful response that it didn't just come off the cuff.
So, we've been doing Move the Needle for a little while, and at some point, if she hasn't already, Truly's going to be dropping in the link to the YouTube playlist where you can find previous Move the Needle conversations. In the last week, Indivisible has become aware of the Move the Needle project, and I can't even really admit to myself how supportive they've been of the project, to the point that they put us on 2 of their national email blasts, and Mobilize, the platform, has been promoting Move the Needle to its participants. So for those of you that found us via Indivisible, via Women Wednesdays, via Mobilize, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And we're also hoping that you can let us know what's going to help you in conversations that you're feeling awkward about, scared of, frustrated with. And you'll hear Patricia and I frequently use examples from our own lives, relationships, and workstations. In terms of this community, we ask in the chat and in the Q&A that you please keep the comments on topic and the conversation respectful. Just because we are leaning into generative conflict doesn't mean we need to get unnecessarily fighty. So it's always a dynamic tension, but let's see if we can walk the line together. If you can think of other working agreements that you'd like to see for this space, please let us know.
So who are we? I'm Patricia Berry. You can find me always at patricia@patricia-berry, BERRY.com. I am a white cis hetero woman. I am a salty Buddhist in a relationship with a white cis hetero man. And stories about our relationship and how we work things out often come into these conversations, which is why I mention it. How about you, my beloved?
I love being your beloved. All right, so I'm Patricia's beloved. Her work beloved. My name is Jessica A.S. Letaw. Most people call me Jess. I am a white cis queer woman, originally from Atlanta, Athens, spent a little time in Germany, and have been in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the U.S. Midwest for a while. About 10 years ago, I came out to myself as a white woman and have been earnestly learning ever since what it means to be truly intersectional with my Black, Brown, and Indigenous sisters of color, with sisters with disabilities, with our poor, lower class, middle class, and upper class sisters. I'm just really deeply interested in what it means to be in true sisterhood. And I feel like in the learning space all the time, and frequently with Patricia.
And we have a special guest star with us today.
We do. We do. Truly, can we ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, it's a real joy to be here. I'm Truly. I am a community member and have been tapped to help monitor the Q&A and the comments. I am a cis het white mom of a teenager, and I'm going to put something in the chat for you as well so you can know a little bit more about me. There you go. Thanks for inviting me. Please send me your
Truly.
chat.
I think it's notable to say that all of us are alumni of a wonderful program here in Southeast Michigan through nonprofit enterprise at work called Champions for Change. So it's a pleasure to have this wonderful group together.
And just a reminder for our Insta friends, unfortunately, Truly is only joining us on Zoom tonight. So she's going to be like this little ghost puppet coming in sometimes when Patricia and I are respectfully silent. If you'd like to catch up with Truly, please feel free to pick up on Zoom, or excuse me, on YouTube, the Move the Needle playlist. The most recent one is called Politics at the Barbecue, and you can catch Truly there. And we will probably fix it next time to where all three of us are in all the places.
We're trying to live in the future, but we're not 100% there yet.
Oh, we are white knuckling it everywhere.
So let's talk about our whys. Why are we here? I am here when Jess and I started this wonderful conversation, and this is the second one. If you go to our YouTube playlist, you'll see another conversation that Jess and I did, I believe, right at the end of the pandemic or during the pandemic. I can't remember. But really, one of the things I love about Jess and being a part of her beloved community is I just want us to build our capacity to have brave conversations with people we love and not feel like we're canceling people. Like for me, I just don't feel like that's the way forward. Certainly, sometimes you have to put down good boundaries. We'll talk about boundaries, but I just think it's possible for us to love each other and have a conversation about things that matter to us without lying or being silent.
And for a little background, Patricia is a fundraising coach and consultant. Those of you on Zoom will already know that from her handle, The Salty Fundraiser. And she really leans into brave conversations around resources, around true meanings of sharing and transformation. And so Patricia comes at these building capacity for difficult conversations from kind of this long, wonderful career in fundraising, but also approaches it from her perspective of, as she says, the salty Buddhist, and truly what it means to be present and human with each other. For me, I am policy is my lane. I'm a housing and racial justice organizer, and I am deeply invested in what policy and funding change in the housing situation can mean for all of us in terms of belonging and safety and a future in which housing is a human right. Because policy is my lane, elections are always circuses of energy for me. And it was really, really important to me to understand white women's role in a potentially successful Harris-Walz campaign. So for me, my goal with Move the Needle is pretty explicit. I want us, Patricia, me, Truly, all of you joining us in this community, to change white women's voting behavior in swing communities. We have the power to make this country, to make this election outcome what it needs to be, but we have to lean into those difficult conversations. So Patricia, the salty Buddhist, the salty fundraiser, the most delicious human.
Overall salty.
Overall salty and very savory. And me, a policy wonk and housing organizer coming together to do what we can to support the campaign efforts. Oh, yes, this political and historic moment. I love all of Move the Needle. I have no favorite section of it. This is my favorite section. I do enjoy talking about politics. Okay, so this last week, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz gave their first press interview, a CNN exclusive. If you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to watch it, although if you're following very closely along with the campaign, you're not going to see a lot of new information. They followed really closely to their talking points, and I think mostly just made their platform available to a wider audience. What I think was most interesting about that press interview, I think the questions were not great. I think the questions were not great.
Silly.
They were kind of silly, and there was one in particular that I thought was irresponsible. I won't go super into it. If you listen to the last Move the Needle, you'll hear me talk about it a bit. But the interviewer challenged Vice President Harris on a policy stance change that she'd had between 2019, 2020, and last year. And the question was posed in such a way that how can the voters trust that you mean what you say if what you say now is different than what you said before? And to me, a much more earnest and serious question would have been, what does it take to change your mind as a very public person? I want to know that the people who serve and lead as electeds, when they receive new information, they're able to change their minds. Stick to your values, hold your ideas loosely. So I found the interview a little bit frustrating, but great to have that seal broken. Swing states. Harris and Walz are climbing the polls. In the battleground states, some polls have Harris and Trump tied in Arizona and North Carolina, ahead within the margin of error, a statistical margin of error in my home state of Georgia, my current state of Michigan, and Nevada and Pennsylvania, and ahead well outside that margin of error in Wisconsin. Those are all, not all of those, but most of those were states that were kind of stipulated that they were going to go for Trump, especially Arizona and North Carolina. The states are now in play, which is really exciting. The other thing that I'd like to, for us to be thinking about this week politically is Project 2025 as a blueprint for a Trump administration future. We've talked about this before, we'll talk about it again. This election is not about Trump versus Harris. This election is about what future the voters are choosing for themselves. You never know 100%, but Project 2025 lays it out. We know that there's likely to be a nationwide abortion ban. We know that there is likely to be a reducing, radical altering, or elimination of the Departments of Energy, Education, and Health and Human Services. This last one is proposed to be renamed to the Department of Family Life, entirely eliminating support for non-cis, non-hetero families and for single parents. So please vote Harris Walz and be having these brave conversations with the folks around you.
Let's get a little snappy going.
Let me take my breath from the political moment.
Breathe. We're allowed to take our time.
Thank you.
So Jess and I are going to do something a little bit different this time around because really we're just preparing you to sit down at the barbecue tomorrow. So we're going to be doing some awkward role playing because nobody does it well, but we are going to hopefully do it in a lighthearted way that translates for you into how you might have some of these conversations at the barbecue. And we're going to just do a little recap of what we talked about in our previous episodes on boundaries, loving agreements, and deep listening, and how to bring them at the barbecue with a really good recipe at the end.
We're also going to touch a little bit on telling stories. I'm going to give an example that actually touches on what I just mentioned about Health and Human Services. And I also want to note that I'm trying really hard not to make this campaign my entire personality right now. And I also want to figure out how to show up in ways that are productive. So when I'm not doing Move the Needle, I am on the weekly Women Wednesdays calls that Indivisible is holding. And I also, when I can, join the Indivisible Rural calls, because I think those folks, in my opinion, and it's probably just from where I'm sitting, but I think that they are being so thoughtful and so nuanced about how they are creating and putting out messaging. They are, as they describe it, driving a wedge between what they call MAGA Republicans and traditional Republicans. And they don't say it this way, but what I hear is normal Republicans. And essentially what they're doing is addressing that split, which may look small to Democrats, but is actually quite large in human terms, with really thoughtful, nuanced messaging. So I do those and maybe one or two other calls weekly, and I try to bring a summary of that back into our environment every time.
So just to recap, how to go into these conversations really thoughtfully and not kind of like a bulldozer, which is something that I have spent a great deal of time trying to figure out and trying to learn. One of the things that we talked about in episode 2 was setting boundaries. And we are going to use a made-up uncle. I'm sure none of you have a conservative Clyde at your barbecue. But, you know, an example of boundaries that we might set, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we do the role playing, you know, some boundaries I would use with a conservative person before engaging in the conversation would be, can we agree to be curious instead of critical? You know, we both have our deep held beliefs, and, you know, in this conversation, could we seek to understand? Could we talk about personal feelings instead of generalizations? Like, words like I feel, I think, me, rather than you people, those people, us. And can we assume in this conversation that the other person has good intentions and they're really doing their best with a hard conversation? I've used that in some conversations where, I've made a mistake, I've caused a harm, and I really want to, have a boundaried conversation in an apologetic way. But can we both assume that, we both are just struggling here and trying to be the best human we can be? So that's an idea. Boundaries, if you want a deeper dive, take a look at our previous conversations. And then another recap of what we did, I think this was last week. I feel like all my weeks are rolling together, so I'm going to apologize right now. Is
Who knows what's going on?
We did a real intensive conversation around what it means to be a listener, to do deep listening. So one of the things that we fall into, particularly white culture, right? Because we're trained by the male, white, hegemonic, dominant thing that we are the savior and we are the intellect. And obviously, anybody that doesn't agree with this they're just an idiot and they're living in a backwards country and blah, blah, blah. That's white dominant culture that we need to unlearn. And we really want to go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you made me think of something. I think a lot about what white culture and what white privileging culture and white supremacist culture looks like, feels like. I read a lot about it. I try to understand characteristics for myself, what's maybe universal in the United States, what might be regional. And I'll tell you one thing that feels true worldwide, especially when it comes to anti-Black racism, but any type of, yeah, that's what I'll go with, anti-Black culture, is one that seeks to disconnect and assert hierarchies. We are trained to disconnect from each other as humans, from ourselves as spiritual, feeling, living, bodied beings. We are trained to disconnect from our natural environment. We are trained to connect only with our logical selves and not our feeling selves. And in that disconnect, we are also trained that there are hierarchies, that logic is better than feeling, that talking is better than learning, that, anytime that there's a hierarchy, you can pretty much assume that that is a dominant cultural lie. And a better way, let me not say better, a more authentic way to connect with yourself and the people around you is to unbuild those, unlearn those. And every single time, Patricia and I talk about a tool, we also talk about what aspect of white culture are we seeking to disrupt when it comes to deep listening. And I know, Patricia, I'm preempting you a little bit, but
oh no, this is fine. This is how I learned it.
This was your topic last week, and I got so jazzed about it. I thought about it all week. And one of the things that I love about deep listening is that it kind of removes that listen to talk, listen to react, because what we're doing with that is we are getting ready to prove our credibility. We are getting ready to prove that I know what I'm talking about too, whatever it is. We're getting ready to make sure that the other person knows that we are at an okay place in the hierarchy of this conversation. Deep listening, in some ways, is such a radical act because you are stepping back from that need to assert any kind of credibility or authority and seeking to deeply understand the other person, even and especially in misunderstandings and disconnects.
And the reflection, and again, we talked more about this previously, but what we're trying to do is not lecture, but really deeply understand and then speak it back to the person to ensure that we heard it correctly. Mm-hmm. And that pause in the conversation and speaking it back to the person, really hard.
So hard. When Patricia and I were getting ready for the deep listening episode, I was trying to practice deep listening by reflecting back to her. Got it wrong so many times.
But, that actually is really interesting to me to think about how much I'm getting wrong and I'm not checking. Right. And one of the reasons that I'm also, and we're totally going overboard on this slide, but we're going to do it. Let's just do it. We're in it. We don't know what we're doing. We're Mavericks. But one of the things that I was listening to in July, one of my favorite authors, Adrienne Marie Brown, wrote a wonderful book called Emergent Strategy and Pleasure Activism. Like there's just so many. And she wrote another book called We Will Not Cancel Us. Just to make, oh, look, you've got it. All right.
No, this
We
is
have the
new one,
same
Loving
bookshop. We
Correction.
might as well be the same person. But she was on public radio, Krista Tippett's On Being show. And what she was talking about was so perfect for what we're talking about today, because she is a biracial human, queer, and her grandfather is a white evangelical who she has had a deep break with over the years. And she finally decided, she tells this wonderful story that just kind of gives me chills when I think about it. This wonderful story of going and just holding space with him and doing what we talk about, like creating the boundaries and saying, you know, to him, we are both doing work of deep faith. Can we agree on that? And at the end of kind of just being together, not even really, you know, digging into a lot or discussing a lot, you know, she felt like their relationship had been deeply repaired just by holding space and saying, we are doing deeply what we believe is our faith in action. And, you know, he may not come out as, no longer conservative in that moment, but now he knows somebody deeply who thinks differently, and that one person is going to begin to change his mind. And she felt changed by holding space with him. So it was definitely a two-way street. And it was July, I think, early in July, Adrienne Marie Brown on Krista Tippett. It was a beautiful conversation. Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, we're so over time. We got to
go. We are deeply listening to you, Patricia.
All right. Could you repeat that back, please?
No.
Well, she also talks about, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to let you talk about your slide. She talks a lot, and this is exactly what we're doing here. Adrienne Marie Brown in that conversation talks about, we all think that democracy is like capital D democracy, and it's the presidency, right? And what she is saying in many of her works, if not all her works, that it's the lowercase d. It's the kitchen table democracy. It's the conversation. It's the community. If we could start really intentionally and with loving muscularity, practice democracy with a lowercase d, we're doing the work too. You know, still vote, don't get me wrong, but okay. All right, I'm done. Now it's time for you.
Voting is neither the beginning nor the end. It's just one of the things. Patricia and I have been saying since the beginning of this conversation series, but I think we've been feeling it a lot longer than that, that our republic is our relationships, and how we show up to each other is the democracy that we're building. It actually, you know, despite being a policy wonk, the country is actually a lot less about policy than people like me would like to think. And it's a lot more about how we're building networks of community care, collective care, mutual aid, and all of those things. Did I want to say something else about deep listening? Then we come back. Patricia, can we go back for just a moment? I
got to figure out how to do that, but I can do it, I'm pretty sure.
Or not, and we can just imagine that we're still talking about deep listening, how that can look when you
I totally screwed this up. Hold on a second.
Instagram, you are not currently looking at my coleslaw recipe.
I'm not looking, and I've screwed up whatever it was that I was supposed to be doing. Hold on a second. I'm going to escape out of this.
Is it okay if I talk while you?
Yes, keep talking, because I obviously have made mistakes were made here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to address a couple of comments that I've seen in the chat. First of all, I have loved seeing where everybody's from. I've got family in Kentucky, delighted to see you. Somebody here from Georgia, what's up? I'm from inside and outside the ATL, the perimeter, so delighted to see you. New Jersey, I've got family over in Wildwood. Just really delighted to see you. That's not what I was here to say. What I was here to say is that I've seen a couple of questions asking about third-party voters in your family. That is what we're going to be talking about at next week's conversation. So thank you for reading our minds, and we hope you join us again next week. Something that I wanted to say about deep listening at the barbecue. Look, we are a little bit in a blue sky bubble here talking to each other, right? We sort of feel, I got family from Augusta. Apparently, I just have family all over the United States. Um, it's a little bit easy or easier to think about these things in this kind of environment where we're talking to and working with each other, folks who are essentially sympathetic, working towards the same goal and figuring out our different ways to get there. It is harder when you are serving up potato salad and Uncle Clive comes up next to you and is like, God, did you hear the latest news thing about those people? And your body, I don't know about you, my body immediately goes into it. And my first instinct is I want to sit on the other side of the room. And my second instinct is, I'm going to put on the smile and nod and wait for whatever this nonsense is to stop. What we're hoping is with boundaries, agreements, and deep listening, that you're able to have a couple more tools when did you hear about those people comes up over the ribs, the potato salad, the however you mark this holiday. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be something as simple as, talking about politics over dinner feels a little bit stressful. What if we wait until the cheesecake and then we can talk a little bit more about it then? And then you've got time to regulate. That's a boundary. That's an agreement right there. And you didn't even have to bring up the word agreement. When it comes to deep listening, one way to do that, and I'm saying this as much to myself as to anybody else, is Patricia, can you do this? Because when you came back at this so well. All right, so I'm Uncle Clive, all right, and Patricia is the well-meaning liberal white lady. Oh God, did you see the? And you can either do it badly or do it well, whatever. But like, let us know which one you're doing.
Okay.
Did you see that latest news piece right before we got here? God, I can't believe those people.
So now I've named my character Gertrude, the liberal white lady, because I have a very white dog named Gertrude. So, and she's got a
Gertrude
lot of
Schwein, by the way,
complaints.
everybody.
Gertrude Schwein has got a lot of complaints. So the bad way to respond to that. So Uncle Clive just sat down and wants to get into it with me. And it's usually as a liberal who sometimes wanders out in the world with a lot of people who think that I'm not liberal. You could just shut it down and leave.
Yeah.
That's the bad way to do it. Bad is a binary term. So I'm going to say perhaps that's one way to do it. But another way you could do it is Jess, if you could be Uncle Clive again.
Yes. I love it. We assigned these roles. I'm so good. All right. So I'm Uncle Clive. I'm a little bit healthy. I definitely took a little bit too much potato salad. God, did you see the news right before we came here? I cannot believe those people.
Uncle Clive, I'm so glad you asked me about that. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you, but I know that we have some differences of opinion. I'm wondering if we could maybe get some boundaries before we start this conversation, because I've been meaning to ask about your political beliefs, but I'm wondering if we could just agree a few things before we start. Would that be okay with you?
God, here you go with boundaries again. Can't we just have a conversation?
I just want to make sure that we both love each other at the end of the conversation.
All right. Well, I'm gonna love you no matter what, but yes, fine.
Okay. So can we both agree that we're going to be curious about each other rather than trying to change each other's mind? So whatever we say, like, let's just agree that we're going to be curious about the other person.
Yeah.
Does that
Okay.
sound okay? Okay. And can we agree that we love each other and we're both doing our best to talk about things that we believe in deeply?
Yes, that one I
Okay.
believe in.
All right. I feel good about that. Okay. Now tell me about Fox News and why you love it.
I didn't even say Fox News. The
Like it's
example
not
that
Fox News. Come on.
the example that Patricia and I role played when we were practicing getting ready for you guys is those people are the ones that put the toilet paper upside down on the roll, and we know who does it. It's those people.
So what Gertrude, the liberal white lady, could teach Uncle Clive about toilet paper, if Uncle Clive came at her with that, So do your Uncle Clive thing. We've already jumped into this. We're going to skip the other slide. So, so we're building this plane as we fly it.
Every
Uncle
time.
Clive, you just sat down and what did you say to me about toilet paper?
I said, I cannot believe those people put toilet paper on the roll upside down.
So upside down, you mean it's rolling from the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, so Gertrude, the jerky liberal white lady, would do it very difficultly if the first thing I said to Uncle Clive is, you know, there's actually a patent out there that says that it goes around the top.
I don't care what any goddamn patent says. That's not how it goes.
So I'm not listening to Uncle Clive. And I'm also not getting to the thing that actually is kind of ripe for conversation with Uncle Clive, which is, what does he mean by those people? I'd be really just curious. Who are we talking about? So if I was Gertrude, the liberal white lady who had really been working on my deep listening, one of the things I might have said when Uncle Clive sat down and said, those people put the toilet paper on going underneath. Can you tell me what you think is the right way that the toilet paper? Because I just want to know what we're talking about here.
Well,
You're saying it goes around.
it's the opposite way from how they do it. Like it's like how normal people do it.
So who are normal people?
You know.
I actually don't. I'd love you to tell me.
You know, people like you and me. We're normal.
But Uncle Clive, have you met me? Did you think I was normal?
No, I think you're a granola hippie.
I mean, I'm a granola hippie, but I put my toilet paper on the way that you taught me to put the toilet paper roll on.
Do y'all see how differently this conversation is unfolding? Conflict met with conflict goes nowhere. Conflict met with curiosity is workable. Not saying you're going to fix anything in a single conversation. We're not saying that everyone is finally going to put the toilet paper on the roll on the right way. But if you can have a conversation, that's more than it was before. Also, to Nelson's idea of offering Uncle Clyde a beer, good job.
I mean,
peace offerings are welcome.
Sure. And the other thing that I'll say is actually, I'm a big architecture nerd. You know, it's a secondary day job. It's one of the reasons I hang out with Jessica Letaw, who is also a big architecture nerd.
Professional building hugger, yes.
But there's architecture of loving conversations. And one of the architectures is, why don't you take a walk together? The minute you sit on the opposite side of a table from somebody spitting food into their plate because you're mad, it gets worse. It gets worse. I have been through a few fighty jobs in my time. And one of the things that I finally learned was, why don't we take a walk together? And I'll give them any excuse. I'll say, you know, I'm trying to get my steps in. You know, do you mind if we do this meeting as a walk? And I have to tell you, it diffuses so much. Or have a beer or a cup of tea or whatever. Once you've become a host of a treasured guest, I think you can hear each other better. So
and there's actually, like, it is lovely, and there is a lot of science around how walking together, or if you are differently and wonderfully able, rolling together, walkering together, which is what I was doing earlier this summer when I tore a few tendons. But just going around together entirely changes your body chemistry, and it brings more creativity and openness to conversations like that. So you could walk off some of the meat sweats and get a little closer to Uncle Clyde.
And anybody in Southeast Michigan knows that cornhole is a way to equalize all power dynamics in fighting conversations. Y'all don't know what cornhole
unless you're
is,
a bad
but
loser.
it's the weirdest bin bag game ever played. I'm from New York and I still haven't figured out the love of cornhole.
So,
all right, where are we, Jess? I have to catch up with my slides.
No, we're doing great. If you just go one forward. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about telling stories. I think that Democrats often have a well-deserved reputation for being jerks. We are know-it-alls. We talk down to people. We believe that we have the corner on correct information and data, and that if we just pour enough data on people, they will change their minds and they will vote and act like us who are the smart, wise ones. it's frustrating that that is not only how we're perceived, but often how we are. And I would like to offer us a different way of approaching these conversations, which is not to deluge with information, which is a little bit what I did at the top of the conversation with this political moment, what the Project 2025 looks like in terms of federal departments. But let me tell you something personal. I am originally from Georgia, Atlanta, and then just outside Athens, which is a blue pocket in a very red area. I was living fairly closeted at the time with my girlfriend. I didn't mind being out, but she was a teacher. And in that area then, and I'm not sure it's that different now, she would have been fired as a pedophile with no recourse for action if we had been living as an out couple. That relationship, unfortunately, wasn't the healthiest for me. And there were points that I sought help. But when I contacted shelters and when I contacted service providers, they absolutely were forbidden to help me. And I'm not even sure how much the social workers wanted to, but regardless, they were barred from doing so because I was in a same-sex relationship. I could not honestly claim that a man was abusing me. So I could not avail myself of those services. I don't know how active a voter I was before that, but I sure was after because I could really have used some help in that relationship and getting out of it. And ever since then, a really big kind of finger in the wind moment for me in terms of electeds is how are you going to support and protect my brothers and my sisters and my non-binary mer people friends? We need it. We need it now more than ever. More anti-trans legislation is being proposed and passed than ever before. If I look at Trump-Vance versus Harris-Walz administration, Trump-Vance are very explicit about wanting to end any and all protections for LGBTQIA+ individuals and families. That scares the bejesus out of me. Harris-Walz, not perfect, absolutely, but Vice President Harris in particular has a decades-long track record of supporting and protecting same-sex individuals and couples. She performed some of the first marriages in same-sex marriages in California when those became legalized. The Biden-Harris administration has been as active, it could always be more active, but has been just about as active as it's possible for a presidential administration to be in terms of circumventing or preventing some of the worst anti-trans legislation. For me, I'm not a single issue voter, but for me, the choice is very clear. That is a story that I would tell at a barbecue, especially to Uncle Clive if we are sitting in a deeply connected moment, to let him know why I'm voting the way that I'm voting, and that a vote for Harris-Walz is a vote for protecting me and past me and future me, and any of the help and support that I might need as an individual, as a parent, as whoever. And you notice I didn't pull out a single statistic. I didn't pull out a single shaming moment. I didn't pull out a single finger wag. I just shared where I was when I understood that that policy environment and my voting actions came crashing down on my own life.
We take a little breath in there.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you
such
for
a
listening.
tender story. I'm really, really hearing. I've heard parts of this story from you, just personally in our friendship, but to hear it so deeply connected to your activism and your awakening as both a person who is being harmed as well as part of a community that is being harmed, straight, gay, Black, white, that you're voting for caretaking everyone. And that is really, really a gift to share. Thank you, Jess.
That's true. I appreciate that. I felt very comfortable sharing that story, but that is the first time I've shared it in that way. So welcome, welcome, friends.
That's beautiful. We're at 9:15, so I'm gonna head forward a little bit to Jess's coleslaw recipe. Because you don't want to come to the barbecue empty-handed. And
Uh,
coleslaw, a lot of people are going to fight about it. So it's a great way to test some of your new tools in a low stakes venue about people who like creamy coleslaw versus people who like vinegar. I'm just saying it's two different sides of the table, and it might very well come down to red state, blue state.
I think this one is a nonpartisan issue. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this might be a class issue or maybe even a queer issue, depending on where you fall on Chick-fil-A's coleslaw. But we're going to put all of that aside. And I'm going to share with you my recipe. If you are still looking for something to take to the barbecue tomorrow, can I propose coleslaw? 2 bags, 10 ounces each of finely shredded cabbage, a 1/4 cup of finely shredded and chopped carrots. The finer you can get it, the better. Like you want creamy mouthfuls. 4 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. You can use regular. I think apple cider brings a little bit more of a well-rounded flavor to it. 1/3 cup of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of dry mustard, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon salt or to taste, and a cup of mayonnaise. If you take the dry ingredients and mix it in with the apple cider vinegar until the sugar is dissolved. You want no grittiness in there. Whisk those together and then add in the mayonnaise, make sure everything is incorporated, and then put your vegetables, the cabbage and the carrots, in a medium-sized bowl, mix in the dressing. You can serve it right away. I do recommend refrigerating for an hour or two. If you wait until overnight, everything gets all the flavors get together. My Mississippi grandmother said deception would get in it. So if you wait until overnight, deception will get in it, which makes it even better coleslaw, in my opinion. Seeing comments in the chat about I do no added salt or sugar, oil, and whole food plant-based eating, and still listening. Oh, Bernadette, thank you. So see, we can listen across different.
I'm a creamy coleslaw girl, so I don't know what that says about me. I didn't bring my recipe to this table.
I do typically eat typically Whole30 compliant, and for the most part plant-based eating. I have a coconut curry, chickpea curry that I'm making tomorrow that I'm very excited about. But in some ways, I think Patricia wanted to have this conversation. She called it politics at the barbecue. We could share a recipe. I think she just wanted me to share this coleslaw recipe because she really likes
it. It is actually really good, and it might have converted me. Not because she lectured me, but because she just kept the taste coming.
Yes, I just put it in your face and you were happy about it.
So,
friends,
questions, thoughts, feelings, and some answers. Can I jump on one? And I'm sorry, truly, I'm totally going to steal your thunder about reading the comments, but somebody just wrote something. I was like, oh, I feel strongly about that. It was, how do we have these kind of conversations with online people? And I have a couple of thoughts about that. And Jess, first of all, I'm going to say Jess is a master at this. Started one of the most successful, least douchebaggery Facebook group invented in a place where fighting is really an Olympic sport online out here in Southeast Michigan. So she's terrific at these. And I'm just going to say a couple things that I think, and then I'm going to turn it over to her. So how do we deal with people that want to fight with us about politics on the internet? First of all, you are not required to do emotional labor to people that are just baiting you. Really, come on. If they're fighting with you on the internet about politics, there's a really good chance there's nothing that you're going to say. You're not going to become friends with them. And you have to decide where to spend your energy, right? So the other thing that I think a lot about, and I'm going to forget her name, and I'm going to bet either Jess or Truly knows the name. What was the name of the person who wrote The Body Is Not an Apology?
Sonia Renee Taylor.
Sonia Renee Taylor had this wonderful YouTube video about the 3 things that we have a choice to do: calling out, calling in, and calling on. Calling out is cancel culture, right? You know, so you did something horrible, you said something egregious, and I'm calling you out, and then I'm walking away. I'm not doing any more emotional labor. Calling in is what we do to our friends, right? You know, hey, there's a problematic stance that you have. that I would love to talk with you about, and let's talk about some boundaries. That's calling in. I want to bring you into a conversation. And calling on is the middle of that, which is you're not going to ostracize them, but you're not going to do a ton of emotional labor. You're just going to call on them to do their own research and do better. So that's some thoughts that I have on internet things. And then one last thing. Sarah Silverman did this beautiful thing during the pandemic with some troll that was on her website when she was doing a lot of her political conversation.
Oh, I'd forgotten about this. Yeah.
And she kind of started to smash down on him. And then she took a look at his profile and she just realized this guy was struggling hugely. And she reached out to him and was like, man, you are struggling. I'm here to help. How can I help you? And I don't remember all the details. You can look the story up. But to me, it was, first of all, a ton of emotional labor. Not all of us have all of that emotional labor to give. So you decide. But for me, it was just an amazingly inspirational story about what if I was curious about the troll rather than making a conclusion that they were a jerk. And the curiosity could be, and I really deeply believe this, people's anger comes from suffering and lack. And it's usually, in my estimation, lack of love and feeling of belonging to a community. So those are my feelings about internet conversations. Jess, you are much more on the political front, but that's a salty Buddhist's call.
It's a great question with no simple silver bullet answer. I will tell you what I do. I do not believe the internet is a place for changing people's minds. I think that it is a place for sharing information and beginning to create relationships. It doesn't matter how many stories you share. It doesn't matter how much data you share, especially in a single thread. Nobody is there getting ready to say, oh, I'm sorry, I see it differently now. Everybody's there to win. The group that Patricia referred to a minute or two ago is called Ann Arbor Housing for All. And I created it because I wanted a place for us to be able to talk about development online, which is typically one of our most, frankly, toxic and abusive political conversations. There are a lot of tough ones out there, but development, especially when you're talking about local politics, I have never had anybody more cruel to me than people talking about housing in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. It has been important to me to have housing for all because I understand that minds aren't changed in a single moment or in a single conversation. I wanted folks to see a continuous conversation around bike lanes, around housing types, around affordability levels, around all of these things. And I wanted folks to understand better that change is a continuum. My life-changing conversations, always for me, sometimes for the other person, always happens offline. If I see somebody that's engaging in a conversation in a meaningful way, I will ask them to coffee or a meet and greet Zoom, and I'll get deeper there. But the short answer to that is I don't try to change anybody's mind online. I don't think it's a great use of time or emotional energy. Truly, I'm seeing a wonderfully active chat, and I'm wondering if you can help us highlight some questions that we've seen.
For Instagram, we'll repeat Truly's questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, we have a really great question. I will work from the bottom up. Bernadette asks, I live in a blue state of Massachusetts. Some towns have MAGAs. I have a lovely old couple across the street from us that have a Trumpy stuffed bear in their home. My husband shovels their driveway and walk for them for the winter. We want permission from our landlord to put a Harris Wall sign in our front yard. I'm concerned about creating conflict with this neighbor. Please reply. So relatable, Bernadette.
So relatable.
Hear what our folks have to say.
I'm going to jump on this as I am unfortunately no longer a renter anymore. I thought
Jess, I'm going to pause you just a minute. Can you repeat the question?
Thank you for reminding me. Bernadette says, I live in the blue state of Massachusetts. Some towns have MAGAs. I have a lovely old couple across the street from us that have a Trumpy stuffed bear in their home. My husband shovels their driveway and walk for them in the winter. We want to get permission from our landlord to put a Harris Wall sign in our front yard, and I'm concerned about creating conflict with this neighbor. As somebody who was a renter for a really long time, as somebody who has what she refers to as her lawn sign garden every 2 years with all of the political candidates and proposals that I'm
It is the
supporting
yard
and
of many
fighting.
opinions.
Oh my God, it is the yard of opinion.
It is the yard of many opinions.
So Bernadette, I'm saying this from a point of deep relatingness. And I always know that my opinions are not always shared by my neighbors. I would suggest, especially since you already have a relationship with them, I love that your husband shovels for them in the winter. So good for old folks not to do that. If you don't know about shoveling and heart issues, please do look that up. You're concerned about creating conflict. If I were you, I would address it directly. Bring over muffins, ask for tea, and say, look, I am asking for permission from our landlord to put a Harris Wall sign in the yard. I know that you're going to be looking at that. I wonder how that makes you feel. I wonder if we can talk about that. Don't try to script the conversation. Just open it and see where it goes. Make sure you know with yourself where it's going to end up. If you're going to be putting out the lawn sign regardless, make sure you're not asking permission. Make sure you are tending to feelings and the relationship. If you are making a contingent, if you're saying, I don't want to put out the sign if it makes you uncomfortable, then be clear about that. But again, make sure that you know what your negotiables are going into the conversation, and then start with an open-ended question and go from there. Thanks for lifting that up, truly.
Can I lift up another one for you, Jess?
Mhm.
It happened earlier up in the thread, and we had someone ask, we're talking about Uncle Clive. What if he thinks that LGBTQ plus people are wrong?
Mhm.
I mean, one of the answers that I would, going back to Adrienne Marie Brown's example.
Patricia, I'm sorry, you did what I did. Can you read the question back
Oh,
for?
God. Thank you.
We got it. You got it.
Jess is here to hold me accountable. So what Truly's asking is, and Truly, let me know if I got the question wrong, that I've started answering the question because I was only listening to respond. Truly, the question was, what if Uncle Clive believes that LGBTQIA people are just wrong? And that's it. And, I go back to that Adrienne Marie Brown on when she was discussing her own activism around being Black and being queer and being liberal in all sorts of ways with her white conservative evangelical Christian grandfather. And she just held space with him. And one of the things that she said to him is, can we both agree that our beliefs are faith-based, whether it's humanity faith-based or God faith-based? And if the person is saying, I cannot agree on that, right? That's boundaries, right? I cannot agree on that. Then you have a choice with boundaries. What is your consequence for those boundaries? Then I'm going to remove myself from this conversation, or I'm going to ask that we don't speak about it. But if you'd like to speak about it, I would love to speak about it with you if we can have some boundary agreements. But so I think the point I'm trying to make, particularly if you are a member of a community that this uncle is attacking, or somebody that you love, or, feel deeply about humanity, you're not required to sit in a space that you're being abused or discounted. You are allowed to ask for boundaries. But I think what we're saying in a family situation is those boundaries don't have to be ultimatums, right? Ultimatums are the final wave of boundaries, which is, I never want to talk to you again, if you think like that. And I mean, I'll be really honest. One of the things that came into this conversation for me and Jess is I was canceled by a 30-year friend, over a mistake that I made that was a genuinely jerky mistake. And I really wish that we could have created boundaries rather than ultimatums around it.
I'd like to propose one other thing, and I'm going to be mindful of time. We are going to go a little over an hour today, friends. I want to make sure that we're picking up on a couple of questions, especially that I saw multiple times. To the person, I think it was, well, I won't name you because I'm not sure if you asked it in public, but to the person who said, what if your family thinks LGBTQ is just wrong? There's so much to say on this, but if you have a copy of Glennon Doyle's Untamed, I encourage you to look at the little essay called Islands. It's not a directive, but it is how she and her wife decided to manage their children and stepchildren in a family of homophobic parents. Again, it's not prescriptive, but she describes how she did it. And I love that it is entirely done with love, respect, and healthful disagreement, in my opinion. Truly,
And
what other kinds of questions do we have?
Jessica, can I ask one question? Is
Sure.
our live video on Instagram over?
It is.
Okay, so we can just have to truly ask the question and we don't have to remember it.
Right.
This is less a question,
sorry.
more
Good
acknowledging.
question.
Oh,
Sorry, real quick. What is the book? It is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And if you are looking in the hard copy, Islands is on page 185. I can't help you if it's audio or digital.
Thanks, Jess. I put a link to the book in the chat. So go to your library, go to your indie bookstore. It is a great one. This is less of a question, more of an acknowledgement. There is some heartbreak in the chat, and I feel that, right? This is our friends, these are our family members. And even when said in jest, not being invited to a barbecue anymore, that stinks, right? So I think that what I want to say about this is less of a question, perhaps more of a response from the two of you. You've said a lot about how we can navigate those situations and stay in the relationship, in hopes that maybe you can crack a door open a little bit to continue those loving conversations and continue to have people reflect and think differently in the polls and in life. Can you talk a little bit maybe about how people can manage that heartbreak and can take care of themselves during the process?
Patricia, do you want to start or do you want me to?
I'll start just a little bit. So one of the things that we talked about with boundaries was grief. And that was, bless my beloved Jess's little cotton socks. Like she's the one who brought that. I think all of us have just experienced so much grief through the pandemic of relationships that were lost and communication that we can no longer hold with people. And it's, at least for me, I can only speak for me, this 30-year friendship that I lost, it feels worse than a death because the person's still alive.
Yeah.
And I considered this person my family forever. And, to be both compassionate for him, saying that he could no longer be in community with me, as well as the person who is on the other side of that. Like it's grief. And I don't know the answer to your question about how do you deal with that other than be good to yourself. And even if you really deeply don't agree with them and cannot be in space with them anymore, is there a way? I hesitate to say forgiveness because I always feel like that's I struggle with forgiveness because it feels like I have to say that you did fine. But there is an acknowledgement that we both did our best and it was not a place that we could live in together. So I wish him well. I hope he wishes me well. Jess, what do you feel like about that?
I appreciate the tenderness of the question. That is so real about navigating the various and often ambiguous kinds of loss. I can't be authentic in a relationship. I cannot be in a relationship at all. I cannot be honest about myself or about my family with this person because I don't feel safe with them. I make the joke sometimes, it's not really a joke, that Letaws have over 100 years of history of estrangements with each other. If you go back, I have a couple of genealogists on the Letaw side of my family. And in any given generation, there are at least 2 or 3 people not talking to each other. I didn't know about that until my second or third estrangement myself, with my father in and out, with my mother until a couple of weeks before she passed away earlier this year. I just ended a 6-year estrangement with my brother. And even when I was estranged from those people that I deeply loved and was deeply troubled by, I never felt 100% okay about it. I wondered, could I have done something differently? Am I holding to an incorrect standard? What is wrong with me that I can't hold on to these relationships? Those are all real questions too. Part of the reason that Move the Needle is important to me is because this is work that I try to do in my life. And it's not always my intimate relationships are not always places that I've shown up the way that I wished I had. So I am creating tools that I needed then and need now, and I'm just sharing with all of you. And I know Christina made a comment to us that she offers radical acceptance as an option to forgiveness, and my therapist would agree with you.
And I would agree with you.
Yeah. We're a little bit over time, Truly. I wonder if we can take 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. I know folks have other places to be on a holiday weekend.
One more question, and it has been a theme that's popped up a few times in different ways, but it's essentially kind of mining for value in pushing back a little on the idea that there is no productive discourse to be had online. So if you see something, say something. I guess maybe that's a bad question, but the question.
No, I think it's something that I struggle with. I mean, Jess has seen me both at my best and my worst on Facebook.
No comment.
No comment. You decide where you want to engage and where you want to put your energy, and are you really making change? And I'm going to turn it over to Jess because, like I said, she's the expert at this. She's like that level, like it's past the screen.
I appreciate the pushback. I am going to, I don't think I'm pushing back to your pushback, but my answer is not all work is for all people. I see a lot of folks online in different arenas, whether it's Facebook, Reddit. I'm not super much on the TikTok app yet because I'm not that cool, but I'll get there eventually. Anyway, I see folks being really thoughtful and, in my opinion, pretty effective in how they are countering harmful in narratives and incorrect information. I celebrate that. I think a lot about power and change, what it means to have and hold power and what it means to affect change. I deeply believe that people hold power and that collectively that's how we affect change. Online is an aspect of it. It is not, even though I host, I think, 2, maybe 3 online communities, that's not where I consider my change work to be there. I consider that to be relationship building work. I don't think it's wrong. I think you pick where your energy, your curiosity, and your life experiences take you.
And my one suggestion, and I use this, and it changed me from being I'm very sharp and I'm a good writer. And so I'm really good at creating shame. I mean, I just acknowledge it about myself. And when I recognized I was going off the rails during, it wasn't this campaign, I think it was when George Bush took it from Al Gore, I asked myself, am I creating churn or am I adding a solution that you can take action on? And so I felt like when I got into those fighting modes, because boy, it can boil the top off my head. Again, Jess has seen me at my worst. That if I am not doing a call to action, I'm not going to say anything. Like, what's the alternative way that we can, like we had a doxing situation in my town, which there were people that were angry at a candidate who was making statements that they did not agree with. And so online on one of the community Facebook pages, they were posting her name and address, and they were encouraging people to go to her house and picket. So reported the comment, posted a new comment, said that doxing is actually illegal, and that's not okay. And here's what you can do. You can report it the minute that you see it, and make sure that you're not engaging in that, because it is not going to end well. So I had a call to action, even though I was really angry about the situation, rather than just shaming the person that posted it.
I'm going to recap a couple more comments, and then friends, I want to release y'all into the wild. So we're going to keep going. I really
I love that everybody's
questions.
hung in with us. Bless
Oh
you.
my gosh. Welcome. We love you. We appreciate you. We hope you had good food today, and we'll have more tomorrow, and that you're feeling a little bit more ready for Uncle Clyde. But I just wanted to recap back. Every comment you make, guys, has been so wonderful. One person said in a comment to the three of us, one tip I use is to determine if curiosity can be achieved. And if the answer is no, then I don't waste my emotional bank account. Man, thank you for schooling all of us. Another person said, I was thinking that the first instinct to argue goes back to that white woman trying to dominate the conversation. And because I think that I know the right information, if I can just school them, they would see my point of view and that they're not right. I never thought of it like that in terms of like the white culture thing. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Appreciate you. Appreciate you very much. Oh, that was fun, you guys.
That was amazingly fun. And now I'm going to go into, Jess and I do this, I don't want to say voluntarily, because this is our jobs.
Yes. We have assigned ourselves this as our job.
There is a number of infrastructure costs associated, as well as the expertise and the time that goes into it. If you'd like to help us defray our costs, and send a little love for our time and labor, you can do it via Venmo, at Patricia-Berry, BERRY-38, or via Zelle, Zelle. And I think that's just my, I know that is just my email address, which is Patricia@Patricia-Berry, BERRY.com. And Truly is putting all of those links, I believe, in
and Cash App.
Oh, and there's a Cash App, which I just did, is $ Salty Fundraiser. You can get us at Cash App. So we love your contributions. They're not tax deductible, y'all. This is our business, and this is what we do for a living when we are doing things we love.
Yep. So support if you can. If not, you being here is support, and we're super appreciative. Let's see. Let me see if there's anything
Bring
else.
us home, Jess.
Yes. Okay. So if you'd like to contact us about any and everything, we would love to hear from you. The best email address is movetheneedle2024 at patricia-berry.com. That's movetheneedle, MOVETHENEEDLE 2024 at patricia-berry, BERRY.com. You can also find us on Instagram at my first and last name, Jessica Letaw, Patricia at the Salty Fundraiser. You can find us on Facebook. Patricia's more frequently on LinkedIn than I am, but we're both there as well. You can also find us back here on Zoom and Instagram Live every Sunday between now and the Sunday after the election, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and all past conversations are uploaded to the Move the Needle playlist, which will be linked in the follow-up email that we send you guys after this. And this one will be up within the next few days as well. Is there anything else we need to say besides one?
I would like to do a round
thing?
of applause for Truly Render.
Truly
Render.
You guys are great.
Thank you for letting our expansion be so smooth and marginally seamless.
Shout out to everyone in the webinar chat. You guys did great.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a great
time. I
tomorrow.
hope to see you next Sunday. Please bring your questions.
Yes.
All right. We're out.